say it, I say it again, you've been had. You've been took. You've been hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, run amok. This is what he does.
Now, I know a lot of folk who hear this ain't gonna like what I'm saying. I really don't give a damn. My job is to tell you the truth, like it or not. If you don't like it, do what you feel you gotta do, but I'm gonna tell it. So when I stand before the Creator, I'm gonna hold my head up high and say, I open the eyes of the blind by telling them the truth that they didn't want told.
Say the Jewish people are the Jews. They're not the Jews. They're not suffering the curse according to the Bible. How can they be the Jews and they run everything you see today? The Bible said the Jews will feel no curse. The Jews will go in the cargo station and serve all other nations. This is what you will not learn in religion. That the poor people in the Bible are actually the victims of the Bible. You cannot learn this in your religion.
The Bible didn't fall out of the sky. The Bible was finally put together by Christian thinkers who represented a particular point of view.
The surprising fact is that the Christian Bible as we know it didn't really emerge until 300 years after the death of Jesus. And the man who determined the content of the Christian Bible had a powerful agenda that had little to do with religion. In 312 AD, a Roman emperor named Constantine, a pagan who believed in multiple gods, claimed to have had a vision of the cross before a battle. After his victory, he became a convert to the religion of Christianity, eventually making it the semi-official state religion. Constantine wanted to harness this new religion in order to unify a Roman Empire that was falling apart. At that time, Christianity was a loosely organized religion, a collection of churches with diverse beliefs and diverse scriptures. The emperor intended to change that.
What he noticed, however, was that these people aren't very well organized. And if there's one thing that Romans knew how to do, it was to get things organized.
In 325 AD, Emperor Constantine convenes the Council of Nicaea to decide the basic tenets of Christianity. He brings together the most powerful church leaders from around the world to discuss legalizing a formal Christian religion.
One of the interesting things is, it becomes clear that what he is primarily interested in is in unity. He wants the Christian religion to provide the ideological basis for the empire.
The goal of Constantine's council was to unify the faith, both religiously and politically. After weeks of debate, the various bishops and priests agree on a set of principles that unify all of Christianity and place the religion firmly under the control of the emperor.
And he then used his authority to say, okay, guys, this is it. Things got drastically changed under Constantine. We have a complete redefinition of how God is to be understood. God now is the protector of the state, which then seeks to use the religion for its own purposes, to unify everything, because you can't have much dissent and run a state.
Constantine also unified the Christian Gospels and limited the Gospels he considered fit for the state religion. Though the Nicene Council did not officially decide on the content of the Christian Bible, Constantine made it clear which Gospels he considered acceptable. He commissioned the creation of 50 copies of a Christian Bible, which contained only the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. What happened to the other Gospels? In 382 AD, another church council literally banned Christians from reading them. Under the Christian Emperor Theodosius, all other Gospels were considered heresy, were banned or buried, their owners arrested, and sometimes killed.
There were all these other texts that real believing Christians loved. And for a long time, it must have been read until the bishops came around to say, "Thou shalt not read this, but thou shalt read that."
Before the Council of Nicaea, Christianity was not a structured organization. For its first 300 years, the Christian religion was a diverse faith, with various beliefs and various gospels. But by the year 300 AD, the Gnostic movement within the religion was seen as a threat to the hierarchy of priests and bishops. The Gnostics and their Gospels emphasized a personal relationship with God, without the need of a priest or an organized religious body.
They really believed that there was something within, that they had a direct kind of access to the divine. They didn't really need to have priests and bishops. They didn't have to listen to that kind of authority.
But the Gnostics' emphasis on mysticism and personal revelation perhaps led to their undoing. Instead of building community and gaining converts, the Gnostics' mystical select circle began to diminish in political clout. Meanwhile, an emerging Christian hierarchy was getting the attention of Roman politicians. With the Nicene Council in 325 AD, the Emperor Constantine solidified the power base of the more orthodox bishops and their hierarchy. The four Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were in. The Gnostic Gospels were out. At least officially.
It's important to keep in mind that these other Gospels that are not in the New Testament were in fact read by people and appreciated and loved by people for a long time.
But what does this historic evolution of the New Testament say about the legitimacy of the lost Gospels?
The study of the lost Gospels is actually very fascinating. It helps us to understand the cultural pressures that Christianity was under and what it was dealing with.
It's rather fascinating to imagine what might have happened at Nicaea and after that if a Gnostic perspective might have carried the day. I would imagine that there would have been more of a mystical sense, more of an inner sense of what it means to be motivated as a follower of Jesus. It would have been a very different church with different characteristics and a different kind of sense, a more mystical sense.
Whoever wrote this gospel in the 2nd century claimed it was the work of Peter the Apostle to give it added authority. It was a common technique in the ancient world.
When some people wanted to communicate some idea that they felt was true or important for the early Christian movement to hear, they wouldn't say it in their own voice, but they would say it in the voice of someone who they understood to have authority.
In that sense, the Gospel of Peter was not a real account, but a forgery. But that brings up a point that is important and disturbing. If the Gospel of Peter is a forgery, then the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are also forgeries.
We don't know who those authors were, but they were written in the name of Matthew and Mark and Luke and John, because these were the great folks of the past. The fact of the matter is, they almost certainly were not written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Most scholars agree that even the four traditional Gospels were not written by the apostles for whom they are named, but by followers of those apostles. If the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are not in fact written by the apostles, then does that mean that the Gospel of Peter or the Gospel of Mary may be considered just as authentic? The answer is still unclear to historians. But there are elements in the Gospel of Peter that suggest it is not an eyewitness account by anyone, much less Peter the Apostle. The tale it tells contains highly suspect material. In the resurrection scene, Jesus and the two angelic beings are said to stretch up beyond the clouds. And behind Jesus in the tomb emerges the actual cross, which speaks. The Gospel says, they heard a voice from the sky, "Have you preached to those who were asleep?" And the reply came from the cross, "Yes."
The Gospel of Peter was too fantastic, with these big guys whose head goes above the heavens, and then a cross that talks. I mean, that's too much for anybody to believe if they want to be down to earth and sober in the early church.
That may be one reason the Gospel of Peter was not accepted as a gospel when Constantine convened the Nicene Council. Yet there were still pockets of devout Christians who considered this book sacred. Sacred enough to be buried with a monk around 700 AD.
I rather like the idea that there's a monk that is hanging onto this text, not only in this life, but in the next life.
The Gospel of Peter was discovered in 1886, one of the first lost Gospels ever found. Some believe the lost Gospels reveal the road not taken for Christianity. Others believe the road was not taken for a reason.
You know, the expression is that sometimes history is written by the winners. And the idea is that now the losers get to speak. And there is some value in hearing losers speak. But the other half of the expression needs to be said, that sometimes the winners deserved to win.
Centuries after they were consigned to the sands of the desert, the lost Gospels remain controversial to this day. And perhaps this very fact is a testament to the power of the written word to convey faith, hope, and mystery across the centuries and around the world.
And then he told me the most surprising thing, that the cross had never been an important Christian symbol until Constantine, in the year 326. For 2.5 centuries, Christians had used symbols of life, the fish, the lamb, the shepherd. Now this image of execution is brought in to unify the empire under a single orthodox doctrine. And why wouldn't Constantine, a man who had murdered a son, be drawn to a God who required the death on the cross of his son?
The finding of the cross at Golgotha proved, of course, that the Jews actually had killed Christ. It was used in that way. You could see the Christians could now say, here is the cross, here is the cross. The Roman emperors become influenced by that. And you see that gradually the Jews become a marginal group in the Roman Empire. The church fathers against Jews and Judaism.